Most speakers waste the most powerful 10 seconds of their talk. They open their mouth and immediately the audience is lost. It's critical that in those first moments, you have them right where you want them. So how do you get them back when you lost them? The answer is you don't. The key is to not lose them in the first place. I'm Mike Ganino, Keynote Director, Communication Coach, and author of the book, Make a Scene. And I've worked with thousands and thousands of professional communicators, public speakers, executives, and people just like you to help them communicate when the lights are on and the moment is high. I'm going to show you how to make sure you don't lose all of that power from the very first moment you step on stage, whether that's in front of a big audience, a small audience, or just in front of your boardroom. You don't need or frankly have 10, 15, 30 minutes to win over an audience. You literally have 30 seconds. And the problem is most of us haven't learned what to do with them. So today, let's fix that for you. Great speakers don't just start talking. They enter, they plant, they connect, and then they power. Enter like it's your scene, not like you're just delivering a package to the front door. Plant your feet without all this swaying and moving. I call it the Keynote cha-cha, when people do this weird little movement back and forth for no reason. Plant your feet and stay grounded when you walk in front of an audience. Connect visually with your audience before you start saying a word. Make sure you've landed your eye contact on someone. Make sure that they've seen you and that you've seen them before you start just talking and saying things. And then drop your opening line with power. This is how presence begins, not with perfection, but with poise. I want you to watch this clip from Laura Gassner-Otting's 2022 TEDx Reno speech on why success doesn't bring you happiness.
Have you ever accomplished something you weren't quite sure you could do? It's energizing. It's exciting. It's amazing. Success. Feels kind of wonderful, right? The work you...
Notice how she walked out and immediately has presence. She walked to her spot like she belonged there. She wasn't apologizing. That is how you enter a scene. And then also how she planted. There was no swaying, there was no pacing. Laura walked out and she planted herself right in front of that audience. It shows them respect and it shows them that she's there to say something and they're gonna pay attention. It's the contract that you have between anyone that you're communicating with is you have to first believe that what you have to say is important and then you have to act like it. So the way that she entered and planted automatically does that. And then the connection. Right off the bat, there's a visual connection with the audience. Before she ever said a word, she looked at them. She had presence. She acknowledged the room they were in by kind of looking around a little bit. And then she was finally ready to deliver power in that first line. She entered, she planted, she connected, and then power with that question that opened the talk. That is how you have immediate stage presence in your first 10 seconds. Now compare that to someone else, someone who walks out there and immediately rushes through the opening or almost seems apologetic about it. I've worked with clients before where we were really working just on those first 10 seconds, the first 30 seconds of walking out in front of someone, whether it was a pitch to a new client they were trying to build, or raising money for venture capital, or getting on a big stage like Laura in that TEDx video. If you rush through and you start to send out energy that says, I'm scared, I'm speeding through, none of this is worth listening to, guess what that communicates to the audience? It communicates, I'm scared, none of this is worth listening to, so they don't. After using enter, plant, connect, and power, you'll really start to feel people start to connect with you. It's not about charisma, it's about groundedness. You're not performing at the audience, you're creating energy with them. It's about tuning in to their micro signals, their nodding, their eye contact changing. The audience doesn't need a performer to be making all the right moves. They need a conductor of connection and energy.
So a black guy walks into a bar. Sounds like the beginning of a bad joke. I see people shifting around a little bit, but it gets better. And the first thing he sees...
You know, immediately in that video, he walked out, he got right started. He didn't apologize, he didn't try to find space to exist. He walked right out, he got right into his scene, he told a joke that connected with them, and then he referenced the joke, which is like a power tool. He made fun of his own joke in front of them. That's what it takes to walk out and immediately connect with an audience. You know, you ever see someone fumbling with their microphone or staring at the floor or really trying to kind of like mutter out a couple of lines and almost like they're asking for permission, that's telling the audience to stop paying attention to you versus doing what Daryl just did there. When you start to connect with people, you actually tell them, listen, I'm starting. Something important is going to happen here because you believe it versus telling them, don't listen, I'm not ready yet. You want to make sure that you lock eyes, that you own the space you're on, that you stand tall and you say to them, let me tell you something that changed everything for me. Let me tell you something that's going to change something for you. Let me open with a hook that gets you immediately interested in what happens next, the same way that Daryl just did in that video, and boom, you're instantly in.
You're looking at a woman who was publicly silent for a decade. Obviously, that's changed, but only recently. It was several months ago that
Most people start with credentials, with information, with facts about themselves, but that doesn't actually connect an audience to you. What they want to know is, are you human? Do you have something helpful for me? What's here for me? The same way that Monica just did in that video. It's not about your resume. It's about a moment of truth, a flash of doubt, about those things that say, I see you because you see me. And when you can do that, that's when the heart starts to open and they're open and willing and able to hear the message you came to deliver. I created the mic drop method, which is this 3-part process that helps people communicate when the stakes are highest. And part of that, one of the parts, is the 5 stage languages. This is how the people you're communicating with are filtering your message. These 5 specific languages that we communicate with them, whether we're on a big stage, a little stage, or really no stage at all. There are these 5 filters, and this is how I teach them and how you can start to think about your next communication differently. The first stage language is verbal. Are your words landing? There's a big difference between saying, I was strolling down the street versus I was racing down the block. Those create different mental images for your audience. So how good are you at creating word images? That's the verbal stage language. How are you putting rhetoric together? How are you using metaphor or tricolon where you're putting like 3 ideas together? These are all different tools that we can use, and it shapes the way people receive our information. Calling someone a bad guy versus calling someone vermin is a very different thing. Saying it was a dangerous reptile versus saying it was a fierce crocodile snapping at us down the street creates a different image in the audience's mind. So what image are you creating in their mind with your verbal stage language? The second one is our vocal stage language. This is how the way that we make words sound shapes the way people receive them. And there's a few levers that we have available here. How are you pacing? Are you speeding things up, or are you slowing them down intentionally? Where's your pitch? Are you raising your pitch to let them know that something is exciting or ridiculous to you? And are you lowering it to let them know that something is serious or thoughtful? Or what about your pauses? You know those moments that we've all heard about so much that can really communicate something? How are you taking them after you drop a powerful idea? Or if you say something you want the audience to never forget again, or even after you say something funny? Where do you pause and let them think? Let them consider what you just said. Also, your volume is another one, the passion in your voice. All of these things shape how an audience receives you, and yet most of us kind of get stuck sounding the same all the time. So vocal stage language is your second of the 5 stage languages. The third stage language is physical. We have so much power with our physicality when we are communicating with other people, but we never think of it. I mean, think of how often you're sitting in a meeting room and no one ever stands up to present. We all sit down at our desks, we get comfortable, we get stuck there. But what would happen if you said something like, hey, you know what? I just need to stretch my legs a little bit. Do you mind if I stand up while I present this idea? Or if you're on stage, the moments where you move closer to an audience, where you hold still to tell an important story and then you slide into action at a certain part of it. All of those physicalities, all those physical choices can really shape the way the audience receives your message, but most of us don't think of it. Especially on stage, we pace or we wander. In front of a presentation, we sit down at the desk and assume the position versus realizing what's available to us. So how can you use physicality to your benefit? The fourth stage language of the 5 stage languages is visual. This is about slides. It's about wardrobe. It's about the props that you bring in, whether you draw something on a board or on a piece of paper. Back when I used to lead sales training for organizations, I would go in and I would teach their salespeople how to be more effective at giving sales presentations. I would always teach them to be able to draw their business's model or how it works upside down, so when they were sitting across from someone at a table, they could sketch it. Now, Could you have that on a slide? Absolutely. Could you have it in a little flip deck? Absolutely. But something powerful happens when you whip out a blank piece of paper or a blank whiteboard and you start sketching out how something works. It triggers a different thing in the audience's brain. So in the visual stage language, how are you taking advantage of all of the tools available to you? Props, slides, wardrobe, whether you are sketching something on a board, all of that changes what the audience experiences from your message. And then the fifth stage language is emotional. How good is your overall message at creating an emotional response? Because people don't change their mind, which is what we're trying to do when we're communicating. We're trying to get people to do something, to believe something, to want something. And none of that happens without us feeling like it. We have to want to change. We have to want to have something different. So if you're communicating, you have to think about the 5 stage languages. And the fifth one, the emotional stage language, is a powerhouse one that helps you tap into these internal drivers, these inner drives that people have. Getting their dopamine spiked so they're interested in the anticipation of reward, getting some cortisol pumping so they're worried or stressed about an outcome. All of these are critical tools in you becoming a communicator people can't stop listening to. Great communicators just don't talk to the ears, they connect all the way down to the bones. This isn't about memorizing tips. It's about becoming the speaker the audience cannot look away from, the one who is unforgettable. Presence doesn't wait for the right slide to show up or for the moment for you to finally warm up to the audience. It shows up with you as soon as you walk on stage. That's what gets your pitches heard, your speeches shared, or your ideas landed in the most important moments when you're sharing them. So how can you use it to your advantage? And if you want to master these tools, download my 5 stage languages starter kit. It'll give you a quick checklist to run through how you're showing up and how you can show up even more powerfully in big moments of your life. Go to MikeGanino.com/starter kit to grab yours now. And if you're ready to make your next presentation unforgettable, don't forget that it starts in the first 10 seconds.